If you think the US housing market is still untouchable in 2026, you need to look a whole lot closer, because behind the national headlines, behind the polished real estate ads, and behind all the talk about resilience, a very different story is playing out city by city. No, this is not a 2008-style collapse across the entire country. The latest forecasts actually suggest national prices may stay roughly flat to slightly higher this year, while mortgage rates hover around the low 6% range and inventory continues to rebuild. But that national average is hiding something huge: a growing list of local markets where sellers are losing leverage fast, price cuts are piling up, inventory is rising, and buyers are finally starting to say, "No thanks, not at that price." That is exactly what this video is about. We are not doing fantasy. We are not doing clickbait myths. We are looking at the US cities where the housing market is under the heaviest pressure right now, where buyers suddenly have more power, where listings are sitting longer, and where the old pandemic-era pricing mindset is getting demolished in real time. In some of these places, home values are slipping. In others, sellers are slashing asking prices. And in a few, the market is dealing with the worst combination possible: too much inventory, weaker demand, and homeowners who still haven't accepted that 2021 is over. So if you are a buyer wondering where leverage is growing, a seller trying to understand the risk, or just someone who wants the truth about where the market is actually cracking first, stay with me all the way to number 1, because the city at the top of this list is one of the clearest examples in America of what happens when overheated pricing meets a totally different 2026 reality. And if you appreciate straight talk about real estate, housing affordability, and where the market may be headed next, make sure you subscribe, drop your city in the comments, and tell me what you are seeing on the ground. Now let's count down the 10 US cities where the housing market is looking the weakest right now. Number 10, Denver, Colorado. Denver still sells a lifestyle people love: mountain access, strong neighborhoods, and that high-income outdoor city image. But in 2026, the numbers show a very different mood than the one sellers got used to during the boom. In March, Denver's median listing price fell 6.6% year over year to $537,000. Homes took longer to sell, and nearly 1 out of every 4 listings needed a price cut. Zillow's home value data also shows Denver down more than 4% over the past year. That may not sound like a Hollywood-style crash, but in a market this expensive, even a mid-single-digit decline is serious money. The bigger problem is psychological. Once sellers realize buyers are no longer chasing every listing, the market changes fast. Denver is not imploding overnight, but it is clearly one of the places where leverage has shifted and overpriced listings are getting punished. Number 9, Houston, Texas. Houston is enormous, diverse, and usually more durable than many other Sunbelt markets. But even Houston is showing visible strain in 2026. Realtor.com reports that active inventory climbed nearly 12% year over year in March, while the median list price dropped 4.5% and homes lingered longer on the market. Redfin also ranks Houston among the country's strongest buyers markets, with sellers outnumbering buyers by roughly 96.5%. That matters because once buyers realize they have options, they stop rushing. They negotiate harder, they walk away faster, and they force sellers to face reality. Houston is not the weakest market in America, but it absolutely belongs on this list because the old assumption that Texas demand will fix everything is no longer enough when supply keeps building and affordability stays tight. Number 8, Tampa, Florida. Tampa was one of the biggest winners of the migration boom, but the market now looks much less forgiving. Redfin says Tampa is firmly in buyer's market territory, with sellers outnumbering buyers by 82.7%. It also ranked among the metros with the highest share of price cuts, as 45.9% of sellers lowered their list price in February. Zillow shows Tampa home values down 3.5% over the past year. That combination is the warning sign: more sellers, more cuts, and softer values. In other words, sellers still listing their homes like it is peak pandemic Florida are learning a painful lesson. Tampa is not just dealing with slower momentum, it is dealing with a full reset in expectations. And once enough homeowners are forced to compete for a smaller pool of buyers, the market starts feeling a whole lot heavier. Number 7, New Orleans, Louisiana. New Orleans is a unique market because it has always had local character that national averages fail to capture. But right now, that local story is clearly softening. Realtor.com says the median list price in New Orleans fell 7.1% year over year in March to $325,000, one of the steeper drops in the country, while homes sat on the market for a median of 71 days, roughly 2 weeks longer than the national pace. Zillow also shows citywide home values down 3.2% over the past year. That tells you this is not just one bad month. It is a market where buyers have become selective and sellers can no longer rely on scarcity alone. When homes take longer to move and asking prices start coming down this sharply, confidence erodes. And in real estate, confidence is everything. Once sellers begin competing harder, the market can reprice much faster than people expect. Number 6. San Antonio, Texas. San Antonio may be one of the clearest examples of a market where sellers have lost control. Redfin says San Antonio had 109% more sellers than buyers in March, making it one of the strongest buyers markets in the country. Even more striking, 57.9% of sellers cut their list prices in February, the highest share among the 50 biggest U.S. metros. Texas A&M's Texas Housing Insight also says pricing pressure in San Antonio intensified entering 2026, with year-over-year price declines widening to 2.5%. Zillow shows local home values down 2.7% over the past year. That is not just cooling. That is a broad repricing environment. Buyers know they have room to negotiate. Builders are still adding supply in many Texas markets, and sellers are being forced into a tougher fight than they expected. San Antonio is affordable compared to some coastal cities, but affordability alone is not enough when inventory rises faster than demand. Number 5. Nashville, Tennessee. Nashville spent years looking unstoppable. Builders kept building, new residents kept arriving, and investors kept betting that demand would stay hot forever. But 2026 is telling a more cautious story. Redfin says Nashville had 119% more sellers than buyers in March, making it one of the strongest buyers markets in America. Axios, citing Greater Nashville Realtors, reported 12,315 available properties for sale across the region in early 2026, up 12% from a year earlier. Zillow shows Nashville home values down 3% over the past year, and Axios also noted that homes in Middle Tennessee sold for an average of 6.4% below asking last year. That is a major mood shift from the bidding war era. Nashville is still a desirable city, but the housing market there is no longer running on hype alone. When inventory rises, buyers slow down, and homes start closing below ask, the pressure becomes impossible to ignore. Number 4. Miami, Florida. Miami may have luxury towers, global demand, and a brand that sells itself, but even Miami is feeling the strain. Redfin says Miami is the strongest buyer's market among major U.S. metros right now, with sellers outnumbering buyers by 147.9%. Zillow shows Miami home values down 2.0% over the past year, while Miami-Dade County is down 3.0%. Those numbers matter because Miami is one of the last places many people expected to soften meaningfully. But in a market where affordability is stretched, insurance and ownership costs remain elevated, and buyers can finally afford to be picky, momentum can change fast. Miami is not cheap enough to shrug off hesitation, and it is not tight enough anymore to protect every seller. If buyers feel like they can wait for a better deal, many of them will. And that is exactly the kind of psychology shift that turns a hot market into a problem market. Number 3. Phoenix, Arizona. Phoenix was one of the ultimate pandemic boom towns, a place where remote workers, investors, and migration trends all piled into the same market at once. Now the come down is obvious. Realtor.com says Phoenix's market shifted noticeably in buyers' favor in March, with the median listing price down 6.0% year over year to $469,138. Redfin says sellers outnumber buyers there by 79.1%, and Zillow shows home values down 2.7% over the past year. This is what an overheated market looks like when demand cools but supply does not disappear. Sellers are still showing up, buyers are much more payment sensitive than they were before, and homes no longer sell just because they exist. Phoenix is still a major metro with long-term economic relevance, but that does not protect it from short-term housing pain. When the easy money phase ends, fast-growth markets are often the first to feel the pressure. Number 2. Austin, Texas. Austin is one of the clearest examples in America of what happens when a market gets too far ahead of itself. Realtor.com says Austin's median list price fell 8.4% year over year in March, while more than 1 in 5 listings carried a price cut. KXAN, using Unlock MLS data, reported the Austin Metro median sales price at $426,120 in March, down 3% year over year, with 10,167 active listings and 5.5 months of inventory. Redfin says Austin had 112.1% more sellers than buyers in March, and 55.2% of sellers cut prices in February. Zillow shows home values in Austin down 5.7% over the past year. That is a massive reality check for a city that spent years being treated like the future of American housing appreciation. Austin is still important. It is still attractive. But that does not change the fact that 2026 is exposing how much speculation, migration hype, and overconfidence got baked into local pricing. And once that air starts coming out, it rarely stops all at once. Number 1. Cape Coral, Florida. And now we get to the city that best captures the weakness showing up across the most vulnerable corners of the U.S. housing market. Cape Coral, Florida. Zillow says home values in Cape Coral are down 8.4% over the past year, while the broader Cape Coral-Fort Myers metro is down an even steeper 9.4%. That is one of the sharpest declines you will find among major housing markets right now. Florida overall is down 4.2%, so Cape Coral is clearly underperforming even within a struggling state. This is what makes Cape Coral so important. It represents the collision of boom-era overenthusiasm with a much colder 2026 market. Buyers are more cautious, supply has loosened across many Florida markets, and sellers can no longer rely on the old migration frenzy to bail them out. In markets like this, once prices start falling meaningfully, it changes behavior fast. Buyers wait, sellers chase the market downward, and every stale listing becomes a warning sign for the next homeowner on the block. If you want one city that symbolizes how quickly the Florida can only go up narrative has broken down, Cape Coral is it. So what is the real takeaway from all of this? It is not that every housing market in America is crashing. It is that the U.S. market has split in two. National forecasts for 2026 still point to modest price movement overall, slightly better inventory, and mortgage rates that remain elevated but somewhat improved. Yet in a growing set of local markets, especially in parts of Florida, Texas, and several once red-hot Sunbelt metros, the leverage has already shifted. Sellers are competing harder. Buyers are pushing back. Price cuts are rising, and the fantasy that every market can keep climbing forever is finally breaking down. If you are buying, this may be the best news you have had in years, but only if you stay disciplined and do not confuse a softer market with a cheap one. If you are selling, 2026 is a year to get real fast, because in these cities, the market is no longer rewarding wishful thinking. It is rewarding pricing discipline, patience, and strategy. If you made it to the end, let me know in the comments, which city do you think is most at risk next? And if you want more honest, data-driven housing market updates, subscribe now, because the next phase of this story is going to hit a lot more neighborhoods than people expect.